I remember the exact moment my father told me he was getting married again. The world didn't end. It just shifted a few inches to the left, just enough to make me feel like I was walking crooked ever since. We were standing in our narrow kitchen, that late afternoon sunlight slicing through the blinds and laying striped shadows over the sink full of unwashed bowls. Dad's hands were trembling around his coffee mug. He always wrung his hands when he was about to say something that might break me a little. Maya, he cleared his throat. I want you to meet someone. Her name is Veronica. She's special. Special. My mom had left 2 years earlier, chasing some kind of peace she couldn't seem to find in our quiet, mortgage-bound life. She called from Oregon sometimes, voice echoing against her new place's high ceilings and emptiness. Baby, I'm finding myself, she'd say, like her reflection had wandered off and was hiding behind the redwoods. I'd nod into the phone and make little hums so she'd believe I understood. Back then, it was just me and Dad. I cooked and he scrubbed, and we made it work with the practiced routine of people who had been left and refused to fall apart because of it. So when he said special, I smiled and said all the right things. I told him I was happy for him. I told him I couldn't wait to meet her. Inside, something heavy settled into me. Like a stone I would carry in my pocket and take out occasionally to rub smooth with worry. You'll still be enough, won't you? I asked myself. The question trembled in the silent part of me that never learned to ask out loud. He married Veronica 6 months later in a rented greenhouse wrapped in fairy lights. The air smelled like eucalyptus and glass. My dress was emerald green because Veronica thought jewel tones would set off my coloring. She said it with that crisp magazine editor certainty, as if she was color correcting me the way she might edit a photo. She was the kind of woman who always looked done hair sleek. Lipstick, a shade you could never quite name. Heels that didn't seem to touch the ground. She had a daughter, Sloane, a few months younger than me. Sloane arrived at the rehearsal dinner like something out of a streaming series. I didn't have the budget for glossy hair. A charmed laugh. A way of walking that said the room was hers unless someone asked for it back. And why would they? Half-sisters. She asked brightly when we shook hands, her bracelets clinking like stage directions. Step, I said, too quietly. Step then. She kissed my cheek the way women in films do when they're already plotting your demise. You'll love me by July, she winked, and tossed her hair back so that the lights caught it. People bent toward her the way flowers bend toward sun. If I sound bitter, I suppose I am. But bitterness is just grief that learned to speak with a sharper tongue. I didn't hate her that first day. I hated the way everyone looked at her. The effortless tilt of attention that abandoned me and flew to perch on her shoulder. I hated realizing how much I'd gotten used to being the gravity in my father's life. Gravity is invisible until it isn't. We moved into Veronica's house because it had more room for blending, as she put it. The neighborhood had sidewalks so clean they looked like they'd been polished by mothers' tongues. Her home had glass stair steps that were transparent and smooth and made me feel like I was walking upward into air. I told myself I'd get used to them. I told myself a lot of things. Dad tried. He built a bookshelf for me between work calls, drilled holes into walls that had probably never known the noise of anything handmade. The night before the wedding, he came to my door with a bowl of strawberries he'd sliced himself, dusted with sugar the way Mom used to do. His fingers were sticky when he touched my hair. I want you to know, he said, his voice careful. This doesn't change anything. It changes the address, I said, smiling. That's something. He laughed, and the sound broke and healed me in the same instant. We ate the strawberries sitting on my new rug, barefoot, our shoulders touching at the edges, like the only prayer we knew was leaning in. After they married, life became a series of adjustments I didn't remember agreeing to. Veronica's calendar ruled everything. She printed it in color and put it on the fridge like commandments. There were dinners with clients and charity luncheons, and a rotating galaxy of gorgeous people who floated through our weekends wearing linen and calling me sweetheart like it was a sugar cube they placed on my tongue. Sloane got ready in our shared bathroom. Curling irons and serums, and little glass bottles that smelled like Paris and expensive patience. Borrow whatever, she sang the first week, except the silk. The silk is sacred. I borrowed nothing. I lined my drugstore mascara up next to her collection the way a paperback stares at a row of leather-bound first editions. It made me feel bookish and invisible and a little proud all at once. At dinner, Veronica talked about art and the newest restaurant that had somehow reinvented food. And Dad drank his wine too quickly, as if it might teach him how to belong. He took Veronica's hand across the table and his eyes softened. I wanted him happy. Maybe I wanted it too much. The cracks were small at first. Sloane accidentally erased my Marian keys. Audiobook on the kitchen speaker mid-chapter because she was in desperate need of Beyoncé at that volume. She forgot to tell me she'd invited friends over. I'd come downstairs in an oversized t-shirt and socks, blinking into a living room full of curated laughter and white sneakers. She borrowed my cardigan and returned it with a tiny wine stain that she swore wasn't there when she took it off. She liked to narrate me. That was the worst Maya's so capable she'd say in front of people. The emphasis turning it into a quiet insult. Capable, as in, she'll do it. Capable, as in, she'll take the paper plates out to the garage. She'll find the extra candles. She'll know where the Band-Aids are when someone gets a paper cut opening Amazon boxes. Capable is what you call someone you've decided not to see. Stop doing everything, my friend Lucia advised over video chat, sucking on an ice cube. Let the plates stay dirty. Let them feel the chaos. It's their house, I said. I'm a guest. Oh, please. She rolled her eyes. You live there. They live with you. Stop shrinking. I'm not shrinking, I protested, and then caught my reflection in the window. My shoulders had learned a new angle lately, slightly forward, as if bracing for impact. Then stand up straight, she said, softer. You're not a folded note. Sometimes, though, felt like a folded note tucked into the lining of a life that had already been written by other people's hands. I poured myself into school and my job at the bookstore on Maple Avenue. The one that still smelled like paper even now when everything was touched by plastic and screens. I liked the regulars who brought me stories about their lives the way people bring bread and salt to a new house. My husband hates thrillers but devours nonfiction about cult leaders, one woman confided. Is that a red flag? I gave her a Joan Didion and told her red flags can be studied until they look like handkerchiefs. People tipped me in secrets. I put mine in the register drawer with the quarters. Dad was proud of me. He told anyone who would listen that I was double majoring in sociology and communications while working almost full-time and saving. Up for a used car that wasn't haunted by other people's gum wrappers. Sloane was majoring in content, which I suppose is a way of saying you're good at arranging your life. So, others will want to watch it. She had a minor in public relations and a major in herself. That sounds cruel. It also sounds accurate. She had a talent for self-styling. Even her sadness looked like a mood board. Come out with us Friday, she'd chirp, flopping on my bed uninvited. We're doing rooftop drinks. There'll be a DJ who does mashups like you've never heard. Also, Connor will be there and his jawline alone is a public service. I have a paper due, I'd say, because sometimes work is the only shield you can hold up that people will respect. You always have a paper due. She sighed as if my diligence bored her personally. I worry you'll regret being so responsible. I worry you'll regret not being, I said, but only in my head. Out loud, I smiled. Next time. Your loss, she sang, and left me with the smell of her perfume hanging in the air like a proposition. I started getting tired around then. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that seems to live in your bones and mutter. There were afternoons I'd stand up too quickly and the world would tilt. The room going gray at the edges like an old photograph about to burn. Eat, Lucia ordered, when I admitted it. Sleep and eat, babe. You can't live on caffeine and the hope that Sloane will someday shut up. She made me laugh. It felt like medicine. Still, there were mornings my chest hurt in a way that made me stop and press my palm to my sternum as if I could soothe it with pressure. Don't be dramatic, I told myself. You're 21, not a Victorian heroine. Drink water. Take iron. Stand near the window and pretend the light is a cure. One Sunday, Veronica hosted a brunch that seemed designed to prove she could feed a small, attractive nation. Everything was white, plates, tablecloth, napkins folded into shapes so precise they looked like they had opinions about you. There was smoked salmon and tiny jars of jam and croissants that flaked like snowfall. "Don't fill up on bread," Sloane whispered, when I reached for a second. "It shows." She smiled to soften it, as if cruelty needed a sugar rim. I put the croissant down. Later, in the bathroom, I leaned against the cool tile and took slow breaths. I wasn't sure if I was dizzy from hunger or from the effort of being looked at. When I came out, Veronica was showing Dad something on her phone, laughing. Her laugh was lower than most people's, a smoky thing, like she'd practiced it. "You okay, sweetie?" Dad asked as soon as he saw me. He always sees me, even when he's trying to educate himself in Welth's language. "Fine," I lied. "Just needed air." Veronica's eyes flicked over me with the scanning efficiency of a security camera. "You know," she said, "I've got a Pilates instructor who comes on Wednesdays. You could join. It's amazing for energy." "I'll think about it," I said. "Do," she said, already bored of the possibility of my improvement. "If it seems like I'm villainizing her, know this. Veronica could be kind." She gave me a coat the first winter we lived together, something warm and proper with a lining that felt like a secret. "I never wear it, darling," she said. "And you have such a knack with classic things." She handed it to me with a gentleness that knocked my anger off its axis. People like Veronica are dangerous because they're not cartoon wicked. They're good enough to get you to doubt your bruises. Sloane and I found our rhythm. She performed at the center, I produced at the edges. Sometimes we forgot to be careful with each other and we laughed, honest and weightless. Once she showed me a video she made for a brand of lavender body oil, and I told her it was beautiful because it was. She leaned her head on my shoulder and breathed. "You get it?" For that minute, we were almost sisters. But then there were the other times. The day I told her I'd been shortlisted for a campus writing prize, she blinked and went, "That's so academic." The time she borrowed my denim jacket and returned it 2 days later smelling like cigarettes and cologne. I bit my tongue until it bled and then threw the taste of iron away with a smile. She liked me, I think, in a way you like the person who reminds you where you left your keys. The first time I fell was stupid and private. I was leaving my night shift at the bookstore, closing up, counting bills with that careful rhythm that used to soothe me. And when I stepped off the back stoop, the world tilted. 1 second, I was a human being with feet. The next, I was a collection of parts that didn't quite agree on where to go. I grabbed the railing, missed, and went down on my knees hard enough to see little white stars. I remember the scrape of concrete against skin, the way pain blooms, and then this strange nothing that comes after. I sat there, palms stinging, and laugh-cried because it was either that or admit suddenly, entirely, that I was scared. "Get up," I told myself. "You're fine." I iced my knees in the tiny back office, texted Lucia, who sent a string of skull emojis and "Girl WTF, go get blood work." "I'm broke," I texted back. "So am I," she wrote. It's not a personality. At home. Sloane was on the couch watching a reality show in which beautiful people punished themselves for not being perfect enough. "You look rough," she said, eyes glued to the screen. "I fell," I said, lifting my bandaged knees like a gift to prove it. "Oh my God," she frowned, and then laughed when the TV did something ridiculous. "You should be careful." "Thanks," I said, and went upstairs so she wouldn't see the way my face wanted to crumple. The second time wasn't so private. Our families love an event. Veronica believes in the gospel of the gather. If people are looking, life means more. She decided to host an engagement party for Sloane and her boyfriend, Connor, even though they weren't technically engaged yet. "It's more of a launch," she explained. "Like Sloane and Connor were a new brand of expensive water. An announcement of intention. Isn't an intention just a thought you haven't put in your mouth yet?" I asked Lucia later. "Yes," she said, "but sometimes people decorate it." The party was scheduled for the following Saturday. Veronica booked a rooftop downtown, strings of lights, a view of the river that made you think about music videos. She hired a photographer, candid moments darling, not saying to pose, and a bartender whose mustache could have a second career. Dad was in charge of playlists. He made 3 and named them things like joy, but not insufferable. He asked for my help, and we stood at the kitchen island arguing about the merit of early 2000s pop punk. It was one of those small hours of happiness you tuck in your pocket for later. Sloane flitted in and out, trying on outfits, FaceTiming her friends, practicing her surprised butt-charmed face in the blackened window. "You'll be there, right?" she asked me, pausing in my doorway, one earring half put in. She made it sound like an invitation to the gym. Show up and sweat. "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't miss your intention." She laughed. "You're funny," she said, like I'd done a trick. That week, I was constantly on the edge of dizzy. I started carrying a granola bar in my bag the way people carry talismans. I swallowed vitamins and Googled symptoms and told myself I was borrowing trouble. When I stood in the shower, my heart sometimes thudded too loudly. A drum in a neighbor's apartment you can't politely ask to quiet down. I told no one. I've always been built to be fine. On Thursday, Veronica brought home a dress for me. "You can say no," she said in a tone that meant I couldn't. But when I saw it, I thought of you. It was deep blue, the kind of color that makes people say words like midnight. It slipped on like it remembered me. I looked in the mirror and blinked because I looked like a version of myself who took up space on purpose. "Thank you," I said, because sometimes gratitude doesn't even need to be entirely pure to be real. "I knew it," she smiled. "The neckline is very flattering. You have a beautiful collarbone, Maya. It's such an underrated feature." Sloane appeared behind us with an armful of sequins. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You look almost dangerous." "Almost." I said, "Let's not get carried away." She winked, but her eyes were warm. I caught myself wanting that warmth, the way you reach your hands toward a fire you don't own. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the house settle into itself. That soft series of creaks and sighs old wood makes when it thinks no one is listening. I thought about Mom under Oregon rain, about Dad's careful hands, about Veronica's organized kindness, about Sloane's laugh, which could make a room forget itself. I thought about falling. I thought about how you can train yourself to ignore certain kinds of pain until ignoring becomes its own performance. I pressed my hand to my chest again and waited for the drum to keep time with me. It did. "You're okay," I told myself. "You'll be okay. You always are." In the morning, I ate a bowl of yogurt like it was a task. I drank water. I packed my little crossbody with Advil and lip balm and the granola bar, talisman for whatever the night might demand. Veronica texted the group chat a checklist. Hair, makeup, ears cleaned. Kidding? She was only half kidding. Dad sent a meme about dancing so badly they canceled the party. He uses memes the way people use exclamation points when they've forgotten how to display joy without punctuation. Sloane sent a photo of her shoes lined up like soldiers, captioned, "Which ones say wife, but also influencer?" Hearts poured in like applause. I stood on the glass stairs before we left, holding the railing, looking down through transparency to the foyer's marble floor. I tried to imagine myself as the kind of girl who glides down effortlessly. My knees twinged. "You coming?" Sloane called from the door, her voice warm sugar. 2 seconds, I said. I took a breath. The world shifted just a couple inches. I steadied myself. "We're fine." I told the part of me that had learned to doubt. I started down. I didn't fall then. That came later, in front of everyone and their phones and the river and the city, with Sloane's laugh ringing like a bell. But I didn't know that yet. I didn't know the doctor's words waiting on the far side of the evening, the way truth sometimes hides itself like a dare. Right then, it was just me and the stairs and the knowledge that sometimes taking one step is an act of faith. I took it. Then another. Then another. Outside, the sky was the kind of blue that makes promises. We drove into it, all 4 of us, glittering and unsuspecting as if we hadn't been headed toward a cliff the whole time. I clutched my bag like a talisman and told myself the lie I've always loved best. I can handle it. I can handle anything. I'll never forget that rooftop. The river curved below us like a piece of jewelry. Catching the last shards of sunlight and holding them just long enough to make everyone sigh when they looked out. Fairy lights crisscrossed overhead, bobbing slightly in the evening breeze. It felt like standing inside a picture someone had edited for perfection, except I knew better. Pictures don't tell the whole story. I arrived with Dad, Veronica, and Sloane. We walked in together, but it didn't feel like together. Veronica and Dad were already arm in arm, the power couple smiling at everyone as though the night belonged to them. Sloane, of course, floated ahead, sequins on her dress catching every eye, and me. I trailed behind, clutching my little crossbody bag like armor, hoping no one would notice how hard I was willing myself not to wobble on my heels. "Smile, Maya," Veronica whispered over her shoulder. "You're part of this, too." I forced one, though inside it felt like stretching a rubber band until it's about to snap. Guests swirled around us, all tall laughter and clinking glasses. The DJ's booth pulsed low beats into the night, but just soft enough not to drown out people's conversations. Someone handed me a champagne flute before I even found a seat. To the bride-to-be eventually. A man toasted, already laughing at his own joke. Everyone laughed with him. That's the kind of crowd it was every punchline had a safety net. Sloane was magnetic. People gathered around her asking about her future plans with Connor, squealing at the diamond-shaped clips in her hair, telling her she looked radiant. She did. I'll give her that. Even I couldn't stop staring at her sometimes. The way she commanded attention with the ease of someone who'd never once wondered if they deserved it. I stood at the edge of the crowd, sipping gingerly at the champagne, the bubbles fizzing against my lips. My father caught my eye once, smiled in reassurance. But he was swept away to networking, laughing, talking with Veronica's friends. I kept thinking of Lucia's voice in my head. "Don't shrink, Maya. Don't fold." I straightened my shoulders, tried to step closer. But the moment I did, I felt it, the dizziness, sharp and sudden, like a trapdoor opening under my feet. It started small. I reached for the table with hors d'oeuvres, but my fingers brushed empty air. My vision fuzzed for just a second. I told myself to breathe, to plant my feet. The tray of bruschetta blurred, then sharpened. I forced a smile, grabbed one, and tried to laugh along when someone asked me if I was team carbs or team kale. "Carbs, obviously," I said. My voice was thinner than I meant it to be. The woman blinked, smiled politely, and turned back to Sloane. My words had been background noise. I hated how used to that I'd become. Half an hour later, Veronica clinked her glass. The crowd hushed instantly. She was radiant in her pearl-white dress, hand resting on my father's arm as if he were an accessory she was proud of. "To my daughter Sloane," she began, her voice warm and sure. "And to Connor, who has been nothing short of a gift. Tonight is about beginnings, the beginning of a life together, the beginning of a family legacy." Everyone clapped, murmurs of approval rolling like waves. Then she gestured to me. And of course to Maya, because what is family if not blended, supportive, and strong? Dozens of eyes turned to me. I raised my glass, cheeks burning. "Speech?" Someone shouted. No, I stammered, waving my hand. Come on, sis." Sloane cheered, tossing me a dazzling grin. The crowd echoed her chant. "Speech." "Speech?" I stood frozen. My throat locked. I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't them. I wasn't effortless. I began, my voice catching. "I just want to say, congratulations. To Sloane and Connor. You both." My words tangled. "Look very happy." A few polite claps. Someone coughed. Veronica jumped back in quickly with a smooth laugh, filling the silence like a professional. And just like that, the spotlight slipped away. Relief washed over me, but so did humiliation. I could feel Sloane's amused eyes on me, the corners of her lips twitching. It happened fast. Too fast to process. I turned toward the bar, desperate for a glass of water, anything to steady myself. The dizziness returned, stronger this time. My knees buckled. The world tilted. I reached for the table, but missed. Plates clattered, glasses spilled. And then I hit the floor. Hard. The gasp from the crowd was instant, followed by a ringing silence that made my ears burn. My knees screamed with pain. My palms scraped against the rooftop's rough surface. And then laughter. Not polite laughter, not the nervous chuckles people use to cover discomfort. Real laughter. And it came from Sloane. "Oh my God," she giggled, covering her mouth, but not enough to hide her grin. She actually fell. Her friends joined in, smothered snickers rippling around me. I wanted to vanish. Heat surged through me, shame, anger, fear, all rolled into one. I scrambled to get up, but my legs trembled. My dress twisted awkwardly, the hem catching on my heel. "Careful," Sloane teased, her voice loud enough for the crowd. "Don't want you to break the rooftop." Laughter again. A stabbing chorus. I heard murmurs. "Poor thing, was she drunk?" Clumsy, clumsy. That word dug into me deeper than any scrape. Because it wasn't true. I wasn't clumsy. Something was wrong. I knew it. But no one else did. I caught my father's face in the crowd, his brows furrowed, eyes filled with worry. He rushed toward me, reaching out a hand. "Maya, are you okay?" But Sloane's laugh had already done its damage. Everyone had seen me fall. Everyone had heard her mock me. And the shame wrapped itself around my chest tighter than the dizziness ever had. Someone handed me water. Someone else whispered that maybe I should sit down. Veronica fussed with my dress, trying to tug it back into place. Her voice calm but sharp. "It's fine, darling. Just nerves. Happens to everyone." But it didn't happen to everyone. It happened to me. In front of them. In front of her. I sat there clutching the glass of water, cheeks burning, heart pounding unevenly. I tried to laugh it off, to play along, but inside I was screaming. Because I wasn't just humiliated. I was scared. My body had betrayed me in front of everyone, and no amount of pretending could undo it. And somewhere above the ringing in my ears, I still heard it. Sloane's laugh, sharp and bright, slicing through me like glass. I didn't know then that the doctor's words, waiting just around the corner, would change everything. That the truth would turn Sloane's laughter into something she'd wish she could swallow back. But in that moment, all I felt was small. Small and broken on a rooftop where I didn't belong. The last thing I remember from the F-top was the cold slickness of spilled champagne under my palms and Sloane's laugh ringing like a struck glass. After that, everything blurred, voices stacking on top of each other. Someone kneeling beside me, the DJ abruptly cutting the music. The skyline yawning like a mouth that couldn't decide whether to swallow me or spit me back out. "Hey, Hamaya." Dad's voice cut through it all, steady and close. "Look at me. Can you hear me, kiddo?" I tried to answer, but the air was thick as honey and my tongue felt clumsy. Then the wind on my face, the scrape of movement. I was on my back, staring up into fairy lights that trembled as if they were nervous for me. The photographer hovered, unsure whether to shoot tragedy. Veronica shooed him away with a clipped gesture. Even in crisis, she curated. "I'm fine." I tried to say, but what came out was more like a whistle. The edges of the world were going dark, like someone was dimming me. An elevator. A lobby with too much marble. Doors flying open, the city's night pouring in. Then sirens, the inside of an ambulance lit in clinical blue. A paramedic asking me questions I couldn't string together into answers. "Any medical conditions?" "Allergies." "No," I managed. "Are you pregnant?" He asked automatic, and for a second that question dragged me back inside my skin. "No," I said, sharper. He nodded. Someone put a mask over my face, cool air against panic. Tried to breathe slow. We're almost there. Dad was suddenly beside me, strapped to a narrow seat, knuckles white around a rail. "I'm here," he said. "We're right behind you," he added. To someone else their car must have been following, but his eyes stayed on me. I fell into them like a prayer. Don't leave me, I thought. Even if I fall again, don't be embarrassed. Don't let go. The hospital smelled like bleach pretending to be rain. A nurse named Robin, with a constellation of tiny freckles on her cheek, hooked me up to machines that made my body speak in green lines. My heart scribbled across the screen as if it had a secret. It had to tell quickly or not at all. I focused on the rhythm: beep, pause, B, pause, if I could convince it to keep performing. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, useless hands open. Veronica rested a manicured hand on his arm, murmuring something like, "She'll be fine," soft and not at all certain. Sloane hovered, arms crossed over her sequins, a little pale under the makeup. Every now and then she glanced at me and then away, as if she kept expecting me to accuse her aloud. A doctor swept in, late 30s, eyes quick name badge that read Dr. Alara Nguyen. She looked like someone who had learned the exact way to bad news and the right way to set it down. "Hi, Maya," she said, smiling not with her mouth but with a kind of attentive respect that made me feel less like a specimen. "I'm Dr. Nguyen. I know the last hour has been a lot. We're going to run some tests to figure out why you fainted. Your vitals are a little concerning. Your heart rate's up and your blood pressure's low. I'm just tired," I said, trying on a brave face that didn't fit. "It's been a long week." She glanced at my chart, the screen, then back at me. "Could be, but I also want to check your blood. Have you been dizzy before?" "Yes," I said, so softly I hoped maybe the truth would feel smaller. "For a while." "How long is a while?" I almost lied. I almost said a few days, because saying months felt like a confession of negligence. But I looked over at Dad, whose mouth was already a warning line, and something in me broke open. "Since spring," I said, "sometimes earlier. It's worse lately." Dad inhaled the kind of sharp breath that opens a new room inside you where worry can live. "Maya, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm the capable one. Because I wanted to be easy. Because in this house, attention is an ecosystem, and I didn't want to scorch it." I didn't say any of that. I stared at the white seam in the curtain and said I thought it would go away. Dr. Nguyen nodded and didn't scold me, which felt like kindness. "We'll draw some blood," she said. "Get an EKG, maybe an ultrasound, depending on what we see. You've fainted from either your blood pressure dropping or your blood not carrying enough oxygen or from your heart doing something irregular. We'll treat what we find." She touched my wrist, that small human gesture some doctors are still brave enough to make. Then she turned to Dad and Veronica. "Are you her parents?" "I'm her father," Dad said, stepping forward. "This is my wife, Veronica. And I'm—" Sloane began, unsure of her title. "Her stepsister." Dr. Nguyen nodded, filed that away as if it might matter later. "Okay, give us a bet." The nurse came with a sting of a needle, vials filling with a red that felt too dark to be mine. EKG stickers like little moons across my chest. Robin joked about shaving tape residue off her arms after night shifts. And I almost laughed because we were sitting under a fluorescent light pretending this was an ordinary inconvenience. The machine printed my heart on paper and Robin tore it off like a receipt. Time began to move in the way it does in hospitals, stretching and snapping, a rubber band around your ribs. Sloane slipped out and came back with a bottle of water for me and an apology for what she'd said on the rooftop. Except it wasn't an apology. It was a performance of one. "Hey," she said, voice pitched for sincerity. "I didn't mean to laugh like that. It just caught me off guard. You know how I am?" "How you are," I repeated, not looking away. She fidgeted, then sat on the edge of the chair. "You okay?" I looked at her face, so symmetrical it felt designed, and wondered what it would be like to live inside it, without the constellations of doubt I carried. "I don't know," I said, honestly. She nodded like that answer disappointed her. People prefer lies when lies are easy to clap for. Dr. Nguyen returned, a small frown knitting her forehead. She closed the curtain behind her. My heart pattered faster at the sound of those rings sliding over the metal rod. Curtains are the last private thing in that place. I suddenly didn't want privacy. "Okay," she said briskly. "Maya, your EKG shows a slightly prolonged QT interval." I blinked. "What is that?" "It's the time your heart takes to repolarize between beats," she explained, drawing a line in the air with her finger. "Sometimes it's just a variant, sometimes it's acquired, and sometimes it's genetic. With prolonged QT, your heart can be more prone to arrhythmias, irregular beats, which can cause dizziness or fainting. Combine that with your labs showing significant anemia and low iron stores, and we have a clearer picture." "Anemia," Dad repeated. He sounded as if the word itself had insulted him. "Severe," she said. Your hemoglobin is quite low, Maya. That would absolutely make you feel dizzy and weak. It's probably been going on for some time. Shame flushed me. I felt like a bad steward of my own body. Dr. Nguyen must have seen something collapse in my face because she added, "Gentle, this isn't a character flaw. It's a medical condition. We're going to fix it." "How?" I asked, my voice small. "We'll start with IV iron, but with it this low. And given you've just had a syncopal episode," she glanced at my father as she said the medical term, almost translating in the same breath, "I recommend a blood transfusion tonight to stabilize you. Then we can address the iron deficiency and arrange a cardiology follow-up to discuss your QT interval, why it's prolonged, and whether it needs specific management." The word transfusion thudded into the room like a suitcase dropping. Veronica tightened her grip on Dad's arm. "Is that safe?" she asked, eyes flicking between my face and the doctor's like she was monitoring both channels. "Very," Dr. Nguyen said. "We match for blood type and screen for antibodies. It's routine." "What's her type?" Dad asked, as if maybe he could donate himself like fathers in movies, giving their bodies meaning. "AB negative," Dr. Nguyen said. "Rare." I swallowed. "I'm rare," I quipped weakly, because humor is the ladder I climb out of holes. She smiled politely. "It just means we have fewer units on hand. We've got one compatible unit now, but I like to have two ready, given your numbers." "I can donate," Sloan blurted. "Too fast." All eyes swung to her. She looked as startled by her own offer as we were. "You have to be the same type," Veronica said. "Too quickly, too tight." "Then test me," Sloan said. Chin up, the same way she says it when a brand asks for a bolder thumbnail. "I want to help." Something like gratitude broke open in me. For a second I saw her not as the girl who laughed, but as a girl whose impulse was to give blood to another person because the room required kindness. Dr. Nguyen considered. "If you're comfortable, we can test your type." She glanced at Veronica and Dad. Immediate family often match not just ABO and RH, but extended antigens. That can make transfusions smoother. Veronica's hand left Dad's arm flexed at her side like a bird trapped beneath skin. "Isn't there screened blood from the bank?" "Yes," Dr. Nguyen said. "We have a unit. I'd like to secure a second. If she's a match, it's an option. If not, we'll cross-match from the bank. Regardless, we'll proceed safely." "I'll do it," Sloan said, defiant, daring anyone to say she couldn't. The nurse returned with a little kit. Sloan sat, face composed, and held out her arm. "I hate needles," she confessed to Robin, then didn't flinch at all. Performance is sometimes indistinguishable from courage when you're doing it for someone else. They whisked the vial away. We fell into a waiting quiet. The curtain let in slices of voices from the other side, someone joking about the hospital jello, someone crying softly, a TV murmuring the end of a sitcom no one watched. Dad rubbed his thumb over his wedding ring, a nervous loop. "I should have noticed," he said. "Not to me, not to anyone in particular. You've been pale, tired. I just thought." "School. You thought I was fine?" I said. "I wanted you to think that." He shook his head and looked at me like he was memorizing. "Don't ever want me to think that at the price of you." Veronica didn't touch him this time. She stood near the curtain, listening to a world behind it only she could hear. Dr. Nguyen returned with the quiet gravity of someone carrying new information. "Okay," she said, glancing between us. "Sloan is a B negative as well." The world tilted again, but differently this time. Not from blood, but from something sharper. I stared at Sloan. She stared back, a mirror suddenly too honest. Veronica laughed a single brittle note. "Lots of people are AB, actually," Dr. Nguyen said. "Unfazed AB negative is quite rare. Less than 1% of the population. Statistically, two unrelated individuals in the same household sharing AB negative is uncommon. So they match." Dad asked, practical, urgent. "That's all that matters, right?" Dr. Nguyen measured something on our faces. "They don't just match ABO and RH. The extended antigen panel shows a remarkably close compatibility. It's good news medically," she added, as if she'd wandered too close to a cliff and wanted us to step back with her. It means lower risk of reaction. What does remarkably close mean? I asked, though something old and electric was already waking up inside me. A suspicion formed from the way my life had bent around other people's secrets. She hesitated. Doctors are careful with words because words can be lawsuits. We look at certain antigens beyond a Bokel, Duffy, Kidd, among others. Your profiles are unusually similar. That level of similarity is often seen in siblings. The word fell like a stone into a still pond. Ripples reached all the way to where Veronica stood. "I'm sorry," Dr. Nguyen said quickly, hands raised. "I'm not making any claims beyond medical compatibility. People can share extended matches without being closely related. I'm only saying this is excellent for transfusion purposes." Then, quietly, to Veronica and Dad, family history can be relevant for Maya's prolonged QT as well. Some forms run in families. Dad turned to Veronica, the way a man turns toward the map. He realizes he might have read wrong. Family history. He repeated, and that's when I saw it. The flash of panic behind Veronica's eyes, fast as a pulse. "Can we?" Veronica began, voice taut. "Can we speak outside a moment?" "No," I said, surprising all of us. My voice had steel. It hadn't borrowed from anyone. "Whatever this is, it's about my body. It belongs here." Silence cracked like ice. Sloane looked between Veronica and Dad. For once her face was not a practiced surface. It was raw with the fear of a child who senses wolves in the wallpaper. Veronica's shoulders dropped, some elegant posture finally useless. "This is not the time," she whispered. "When is the time?" Dad asked, his voice breaking in the middle like a rope. "Our daughter is on a hospital bed getting ready for a transfusion. The doctor says what she says and you want to step into a hallway." "Don't dramatize," Veronica snapped, reflex like a well-worn heel. Then she closed her eyes, swallowed, and when she opened them again, she was smaller. "Fine," she said. "Fine." Dr. Nguyen looked like she wanted to leave, but understood the room was a fuse and her medical presence might be the only adult supervision. She stayed just inside the curtain. Veronica faced me instead of Dad. Maybe because I was the one tied to tubes. I looked safest. "You were right earlier," she said, and at first I didn't know what she meant. "When you said sometimes beginnings are about address changes, and not just where you sleep." "Veronica," Dad warned, but there was no authority left in his voice. It was plea. She took a breath. "I met your father when I was 22, she said. "A charity gala. I was with a man I thought would be a forever. Your father was not available." She gave a small, humorless smile. "You were a toddler." It was complicated. The room rearranged itself. I felt my body float up to the ceiling and look down at the bed where my face tried to be brave. "We had an interruption," she continued, choosing a word that hurt my ears. "A few months. Then I went back to my life. And then I found out I was pregnant. I assumed it was my partner's God. I wanted it to be. The timeline was ambiguous." She didn't look at Dad when she said that. He stared at the wall as if it might offer a portal. He wanted to be the father. He put his name on the certificate. We built a life. We raised Sloane, and Dad said, voice hoarse, like he'd been running. "And," she whispered, "I never checked." Sloane's mouth opened, closed. "Never checked." "What?" "If the timeline was ambiguous," I said, somehow calmly, "then you could have known." Veronica flinched. I didn't want to know. I told myself I did. I told myself it didn't matter. But I knew what name would fall out if I shook the truth. She finally looked at Dad, and then years later we reconnected. The children were older. Divorce for me, divorce for him. It felt like the world had rearranged itself to make us right. I told myself it was fate. I told myself I wasn't stealing anything. Sloane took one small step backward, as if the floor had moved. "So, who is my father?" Her voice was a little girl's voice inside the echo of a woman's body. Something in me braced. Some childhood memory unlocked a photo of Dad and me at a beach. Shadow in the corner that looked like a woman's hair snagged on the wind. Had she always been there? Had there always been a thread we didn't see? Veronica finally said it, each syllable like a rung she forced her foot onto. It's likely. It could be David. Dad's name in her mouth was a trespass. He blinked as if someone had slapped him gently, repeatedly. Veronica. I don't know, she said, fast, a defense that laid itself down as admission. I don't know. I never tested. Sloane's father, the man who raised her, left because I left him, not because of this. He never asked. I never told. I told myself the truth would hurt more people than it helped. Sloane looked at me then as if the only person in the room who could tell her what she was suddenly was the girl she'd laughed at. Her eyes were glassed with tears that stubbornly refused to fall, as if even her sadness had been taught not to smudge. Are you saying, she started, and the words cracked? Are you saying she couldn't say my dad or your dad? The language didn't have corridors for this yet. Dr. Nguyen cleared her throat gently, human metronome trying to steady the beat. Medically, she said to the air, the extended antigen match is consistent with siblings. But it's not proof. That would require a DNA test. Right now, the immediate priority is Maya's transfusion. The word siblings hung above us like a chandelier about to fall. The room was too small for it. Dad sat down suddenly as if the Earth's gravity had increased. He put his head in his hands, the posture of a man who had accidentally started a fire and was only now seeing the smoke. Veronica, he said, voice hollow, were you with me? While I was married. She stared at the curtain seam. It was a long time ago, she whispered. That's not an answer, he said. I can't, she began, and then stopped because what could she say? Yes, I loved your hand in my hair while your wife tucked your daughter in. Yes, I let the truth slip around me like silk. Yes, I chose a version of my life in which guilt didn't have a forwarding address. Sloane made a sound, then a small, wounded animal sound I had never imagined her capable of. She pressed her fingers to her mouth the way she did when laughing, and I realized I had never seen that gesture deployed for anything else. So my entire story, she whispered, was written on a lie you decorated. Veronica reached for her. Baby, don't, Sloane said, stepping back. Don't baby me. We all stood in the wreckage of beautiful sentences. It would have been cinematic if it hadn't been our lives. Dr. Nguyen, bless her, gently steered us back to the task at hand. Maya, she said, I need your consent to proceed with the transfusion. We have a bank unit ready. We can also draw a unit from Sloane and crossmatch. Will take a little time. Given your numbers, I'd like to start the first unit now and prepare the second. I looked at Sloane, who was looking at me as if I were the only familiar landmark on a map that had burned. The miracle of it, not that she might be my sister, but that she wanted to help even before she knew. The ridiculous, humble miracle of someone offering their blood without a narrative to post about later. Yes, I said, steady, surprising myself again. Use the bank unit first. Then hers, if it's safe. It's safe, Dr. Nguyen said. And thank you both. She nodded to the nurse. The bag appeared, red as a small sun. Robin hung it with the ease of someone who'd learned how to hold other people's lives up on hooks. The tube ran down like a vein borrowed from a kinder universe. When the first drop moved toward me, I closed my eyes and let it. While we waited for the second unit to clear, the room settled into a silence punctured only by machine beeps. Dad moved his chair close, his knee pressed to the bed. Veronica stood away from us, arms folded like armor made of elbows. Sloane sat, hands twisting in her lap, sequins turning between her fingers like coins. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, not performing, not trying for anything other than truth. For laughing, for all the ways I didn't see you. My throat tightened. I'm sorry too. I heard myself say and didn't know why until the rest of the sentence caught up. For letting you be so big without asking if you wanted to be. She blinked, confused and grateful. I always wanted to be, she said. Then, smaller, I didn't know what it cost until now. We watched the bag empty. In that slow drip, a future rearranged itself. Dr. Nguyen returned with the cross-match results and a relieved smile. Perfect match, she said. We'll draw now and transfuse in a bit. They prepped Sloane. She watched the needle go in with a focus that looked like prayer. As her blood filled the bag, she looked up at me, and God help me smiled. A small smile, scared and stubborn. A bridge. Look at us, she whispered. Content. I laughed then, a soft, exhausted laugh that made Dad smile through his brokenness. Veronica sank into the chair in the corner, finally aging around the eyes. I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I wanted to. But I knew this. Secrets always mouth the word eventually when you try to bury them. Dr. Nguyen hung Sloane's donation. The second unit slipped into me, and I felt a heaviness lift I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Color returned to the world in increments. The nurse's freckles. The cheap art print on the wall. The way my father's eyes were green only in certain lights. Better. Dr. Nguyen asked, and I nodded. Thank you, I said, and meant it with a ferocity that surprised me. For all of it, even the unusual medical commentary. She smiled. You're welcome. I'm going to recommend follow-ups a hematology workup to find out why your iron is so low. And cardiology to address the QT interval. Some forms are genetic. It'll be important to know the family history. Her gaze flicked to Dad and Veronica, not unkindly. It would be useful if everyone could be as honest as possible. I will, Dad said immediately. Whatever you need. He looked at Veronica like a door he wasn't sure how to open anymore. We will. Veronica closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked at Sloane. If you want, she said, we can do a DNA test. We should. You deserve your truth. Sloane's chin trembled. I deserve my name, she said. And if it changes, I deserve to be the one to carry it. I'll take the test, Dad said, quiet, firm. Whatever it says, He stopped because the sentence had too many possibilities. I'll love you. I'll leave. I'll stay. I'll break. He chose instead, I will be accountable. Veronica flinched at the word like it had teeth. I'm sorry, she said finally, to all of us. I told myself I was protecting everyone. I was protecting myself. We sat with that as the bag emptied and my body stitched itself together with borrowed thread. Somewhere a TV laughed for us. In the hallway, a child cried and then, mercifully, didn't. Life went on without permission. When the nurse disconnected the line, my arms felt almost weightless. The room was the same and entirely different. I had fainted and fallen and humiliated myself, yes. But I had also been carried. And in being carried, I had been delivered into a truth that, while devastating, felt like oxygen after a long, dark swim. Sloane leaned forward, elbows on knees, and looked at me. The light hit her irises, and I realized for the first time they were the same peculiar hazel as mine, flecked with something gold that only shows up when you're tired or honest. If the test says, she began, then stopped. If it says what it probably says, what do we do? I almost said we do what sisters do. But I had no idea what that was. My mother's voice flickered over my shoulder like a ghost. Baby, I'm finding myself. Maybe that's all any of us were doing. Falling and finding. Falling again. We start with breakfast, I said. Something greasy. We tell the truth at a table that can handle it. She smiled, tears finally choosing their paths. And you can borrow the silk, she said, voice breaking into a laugh that wasn't sharp at all. Sacred is negotiable. Dad choked on a sound that might have been a sob. He took my hand, then reached for Sloane's, then lifted his other hand, and it landed, almost against his will, on Veronica's shoulder. She looked at it like it was a verdict and then covered it with her own. For 1 second, we were a shape that made sense. For people holding on because letting go would mean admitting how close the edge. Dr. Nguyen stepped out to give us a minute. The curtain swished back in time, mercifully allowed itself to be measured again. I lay there, more myself than I had been in months, and felt the truth settle in my bones. Not just the truth of blood types and intervals and percentages. The other truth. The one that had been rustling at the edges of my life like wind through blinds. That the family you think you have is sometimes a story. And the family you actually have is a revelation. I closed my eyes and pictured that rooftop, the lights, the gasp, The laughter. I let myself feel the humiliation of it, the anger, the sharp line of Sloane's grin. And then I overlaid the image of her arm stretched out for the needle, the way she watched the blood. I held both at once, the cruelty and the kindness, because people are rarely just one thing, including me. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Sloane watching me like she was afraid I'd disappear. "You still here?" she asked, voice soft. "I am," I said. More than before, I think. Outside the curtain, a code was called 2 halls away, and a team ran past our quiet cell. Shoes loud on linoleum, carrying the urgent sound of mortality. We didn't move. We sat with our new words, sister hanging heavy and bright, fair like a bruise in the shape of a mouth, accountable echoing until it found a place to sit. In the dim light of the monitors, I saw the shadow of the cliff we'd all been walking along. Maybe we hadn't fallen. Maybe we'd been lowered down to a ledge where you can see the river better and decide whether you want to climb back up together or find different paths to the bottom. For the first time in months, my heart felt like it was beating for me and not against me. It didn't race. It kept time. I breathed with it. I let the blood settle where it needed to go. And I whispered, not out loud, not for anyone else, just for the part of me that needed to hear it, time not clumsy. I'm not weak. I was unwell, and now I'm getting well. I was lied to, and now I know. The doctor's truth had arrived like a siren and a scalpel, cutting clean. The other truth would take longer, would bleed a little, would scar, but it would be ours. And a wound you own doesn't own you. I didn't sleep that night in the hospital. The transfusion had left me wired, like my body was humming with borrowed electricity, to alert, to rest. Dad had pulled the stiff visitor chair close to my bed, his head tilted back against the wall, dozing in jerks. Veronica sat by the window, her posture rigid, face lit by the glow of her phone as if she could scroll her way out of this mess. And Sloane had curled herself into the recliner in the corner, knees tucked up, sequin dress traded for hospital scrubs they gave her after she donated blood. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Every time I glanced over, she was awake too, staring into the dark with wide, restless eyes. Once our gazes met and she whispered, almost embarrassed, "I keep hearing your heart monitor. It's like I'm eavesdropping on you being alive." I smiled, a tired half-curve of my mouth. Better than eavesdropping on me falling. Her lips twitched into something fragile. "I deserve that." "Yeah," I said softly. "But maybe you don't deserve all of it." Her eyes shone. For once, she didn't have a comeback. By morning, the nurse declared my vitals beautiful and unhooked me from the machine. Dad signed discharge papers with shaky relief. Veronica fussed about follow-up appointments, her voice tight, while Sloane lingered near me like she didn't know whether she was allowed to help. When we walked into the lobby, sunlight poured through the glass doors to bright after the sterile dimness of the night. Reporters weren't waiting, thank God, but the weight of last night's revelation was thicker than any crowd. Dad stopped near the entrance. His voice was low, gravelly from exhaustion. "We can't go back home and pretend this didn't happen." Veronica stiffened. "David, please. Not here." "Then where?" His voice cracked sharp, startling people at the front desk. "Where do we put the truth? Do we shove it under the rug until someone else faints?" Sloane flinched at the edge in his tone. "Maybe we just go home," she whispered. "Figure it out privately." But Dad shook his head. "No, I've hidden too much in private. My daughter nearly collapsed in front of strangers because we were too busy curating dinners and rooftop shows to notice she was sick. No more pretending." He looked at me then, his green eyes searching. "You deserve the truth. Both of you do." That afternoon, Veronica tried to delay. She wanted a week, a cooling off period. Dad refused. He called my Aunt Claire, my Uncle James, even Grandma Jo. Within hours, our living room filled with family people who had danced at my birthdays, signed cards with love always, and who now sat stiff on couches sensing something tectonic was about to break. I sat on the love seat, a blanket around my shoulders, my body still tender from the hospital. Sloane perched beside me, unusually quiet, her phone face down on the coffee table, like even she didn't want to filter this moment for content. Dad stood near the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "I know this is unusual, but last night, some truths came to light. Truths I should have known years ago." The room stilled. My aunt shifted, eyes narrowing at Veronica. My uncle leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Dad's voice broke, but he forced it steady. "There's a possibility," he looked at me, then Sloane. "A strong possibility that both of these girls are mine." A ripple went through the room, gasps, murmurs. Grandma Jo muttered, "Lord help us." Sloane's face flushed crimson. She dropped her gaze, fists clenched in her lap. Veronica finally stood. Her voice was brittle but clear. "Yes, I should have told you all years ago. I made a choice, a coward's choice. I convinced myself it was better not to disturb the lives we'd built. But in doing so, I lied to my daughter, to my husband, to all of you." The confession landed like a bomb. It wasn't me who was humiliated this time. It was Sloane. Her friends, several had come, called by curiosities, sat frozen, their eyes darting between her and me, trying to rewrite what they thought they knew about the shining girl at the center of every room. One of them whispered too loud, "Wait, so your dad might be?" Her dad. The others leaned back the way people do when a fire sparks too close. Sloane's chin lifted, but her eyes glistened. "Yes," she said, voice shaking. "Turns out my life's been a rerun of someone else's show." The room hushed. For the first time, I saw her without her armor. No sequins, no spotlight. Just a girl caught in the crossfire of her mother's lies. And then, because justice has a cruel sense of timing, my Uncle James spoke. "So all those years, Veronica, you played house while my brother raised one daughter alone. And you never thought to mention he had another?" The accusation cut sharp. Whispers rose like smoke. Faces turned toward Veronica with judgment I could practically feel. Sloane crumpled in on herself. Her laugh, the weapon she'd wielded against me, was nowhere. In its place was silence. I could have stayed quiet. Could have let her drown in the shame she'd once forced on me. But something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the four blood still pulsing through me, reminding me life is short and wasted on cruelty. Maybe it was seeing her small and fragile for once. I stood, my knees steady under me this time. Enough. The chatter died instantly. All eyes turned to me. "Yes, Veronica lied." I said, my voice clearer than I felt. "Yes," Sloane laughed when I fell. "And yes, I've spent months shrinking because I didn't think I deserved space. But none of that changes one fact. We didn't choose this." I gestured to Sloane. "She didn't choose to be born in the middle of secrets. Neither did I. We're not the villains here. We're the fallout." Sloane's eyes flew to mine, wide with shock. I turned to Veronica, my tone harder. "You wanted to protect yourself, not us. You let us grow up half-sisters when we may have been full. You let me believe I was invisible, and you let her believe she was untouchable. That's on you." The room buzzed, nods and mutters of agreement. Then I looked at Dad. "But you're here now, and what happens next is up to you. Not just as a husband, but as a father. To both of us." He swallowed hard, tears brimming. "You're right," he said. "I failed once by not seeing. I won't fail again. We'll do the test. And whatever it says, I'll be the father you both deserve." Gasps again. My aunt wiped her eyes. Grandma Jo muttered another prayer, this one softer. The power in the room shifted. For the first time, it wasn't Veronica or Sloane commanding attention. It was me. And instead of shrinking, I stood taller. I met every eye. Last night, Sloane laughed when I fell. But the doctor revealed why I fell. I was sick. I needed blood. And guess who stepped up? She did. The same girl who mocked me gave me what kept me standing here today. A murmur of surprise. Heads turned to Sloane. She looked startled by my words, as if kindness aimed at her felt undeserved. "So if you're going to whisper," I said, raising my voice, "whisper about that. Whisper about the girl who gave her blood, not the girl who gave a cruel laugh. The silence that followed was heavy, cleansing. Then, slowly, people began nodding. One of Sloane's friends even reached across the couch to squeeze her hand. Sloane's eyes overflowed. She whispered, just loud enough for me, "Why are you protecting me?" I leaned closer, voice low, because I know how it feels to be humiliated in a room full of people. And I won't let you carry that alone. Her tears fell then, unchecked. Justice didn't come as a perfect revenge scene. It came as truth-breaking chains. Veronica's reputation cracked in front of her own family. No more curated image, no more seamless hostess. She was a woman exposed for her lies, her choices dissected in whispers that would follow her long after the night ended. That was her justice. Sloane's justice came quieter. The pedestals she'd been placed on crumbled, leaving her eye to eye with me at last. No higher, no lower, equal, and maybe for the first time, real and mine. Mine was this. I stood in front of everyone who had doubted, dismissed, overlooked me, and I spoke with a voice they couldn't ignore. I was no longer the girl who fainted, who fell, who shrank into corners. I was the one who demanded truth and refused shame. For the first time, I didn't feel like gravity had abandoned me. I felt like I was the gravity pulling everyone into orbit around the truth. The DNA test would come later. The family fallout would take months, maybe years. But in that living room, with everyone watching, I had taken my stand. And no one, not even Sloane's laughter echoing in memory, could take that away. The city looked different the week after everything split open. It wasn't that the streets had changed. Maple Avenue still smelled like coffee and damp paper outside the bookstore. The river still wore its long ribbon of light at dusk. But my pace through it wasn't the same. I wasn't hurrying to be invisible anymore. I walked like someone who had been carried back to herself and handed a mirror she wasn't afraid to hold. The results took 5 days. 5 days of everyone living on the edge of a word we were afraid to say out loud. In those days, I learned a lot about the elastic nature of time, how minutes can stretch like taffy when you're waiting for an answer. How hours can collapse into one breath when you're laughing with someone you were sure you'd never forgive. Sloane came with me to my cardiology follow-up. She didn't ask permission. She just knocked on my door the same way she always did. 3 raps, like a signature, and said, "I'm driving." "You don't have to," I said, hoisting my bag over my shoulder. She rolled her eyes. The gesture familiar and softened. "I literally do. You have a heart appointment. I have a heart." Then, quieter, almost shy, "Let me." So I let her. In the exam room, the cardiologist, a woman with kind eyes and a low, reassuring voice, explained my prolonged QT again, this time with diagrams instead of fear. She told me there are versions that run in families and versions that don't, and that either way, we could manage it. No more certain medications. Be careful with stimulants. Listen to my body when it murmurs, not only when it screams. She printed a list. She asked about family history. Sloane and I looked at each other like, ask us in a week. After, we sat in the parking lot with the windows down, July heat draping itself over us like a tired dog. "I'm sorry you have to think about your heart all the time," she said, fingers toying with the tassel on my bag. "Everyone has to think about their heart," I said. "Most people just pretend it's a rumor." She laughed softly. "You sound like your major." "Which one?" I grinned. "Both." We were quiet a minute. The kind of quiet that used to feel like a dare and now felt like a hand resting near yours. Not asking, just waiting. "Why did you laugh?" I asked finally, the question small and sharp as a thorn. She stared out the windshield. "Because I used to think nothing bad would stick to me if I got to it first," she said. "If I turned everything into content, I controlled it. I saw you fall, and for 1 second, I thought, good, it's not me. And then I heard it's a laugh, and it sounded like someone else's mouth using my voice. I wanted to slap it off my face. I didn't. I doubled down, because that's my worst habit." She turned to me. "I'm sorry. I'm going to keep saying it until it lives somewhere other than my throat." "Mean it once," I said, "and then do better." That's heavier than 1,000 sorries. I mean it, she whispered. And I'll do better. I believed her. Not because she was finally crying, but because she wasn't performing the tears. They just fell. That night, Dad made pasta the way he does when he needs to feel useful. Too much garlic, not enough restraint. Veronica set the table like it was a ceremony for penance. She was quieter than I'd ever seen her. She'd stepped down from one of her charity boards that morning to focus on family matters. The press release was elegant and bloodless. The reality in our kitchen was neither. We ate without our usual choreography. Forks scraped plates. The AC hummed. Somewhere a neighbor laughed, unburdened by our plot twist. I talked to your mother, Dad said, finally, eyes on me. Which one? Sloane muttered, then winced. Sorry, my mother, I said, half a laugh catching on the edge of the word. Oregon, he nodded. She's flying in next week. She wants to be here. He looked at Veronica like a man who discovered gravity is faith-based. She deserved the truth. Everyone did. Veronica held her water glass with both hands as if it might do something. Foolish if she didn't. I've started making a list, she said, of everyone I need to apologize to. It's long. She looked at us. I don't expect forgiveness. I do expect to be accountable. The word landed differently when she said it this time. Less like a performance, more like a door she was opening and walking through even though the room beyond was cold. We'll see, I said, because justice is not a coupon you can redeem immediately. Thank you for the coat, I added, surprising myself. It's still the warmest thing I own. She looked startled. You're welcome, she said. It sounded like a language she used to speak and had to relearn. On the 5th day, the envelope came. White, unremarkable, the kind of thing you could throw away by accident and never know you'd tossed a match. We didn't. We left it on the counter for a minute like a live wire. Then Dad put it in the center of the table and sat down like a judge who wishes everyone could go home instead. Whatever it says, he whispered, I'm here. Me too, Sloane said, her voice steady. Open it, I said. My hands were okay. They didn't shake like they used to. He did. I watched his face before I watched his mouth move. People tell the truth up there first. His eyes filled and his mouth softened. He passed the paper to me like it was something sacred and dangerous in mine. Probability of paternity, 99, 98%. The number hummed like a note I'd had in my bones for years but never learned to sing. Sloane leaned over my shoulder, read with me, and then let out a sound I can only describe as a release valve opening. She put her hand over mine. Her fingers were trembling. Hi, she whispered, a tear sliding down and landing on the paper, leaving a dark dot like punctuation. Sister? Something switched on behind my ribs, an old light that had been wired wrong now finally connected. I squeezed her hand. Sister, I said, and my voice did not break. Dad let out a breath he might have been holding since 22. He reached for us, and this time the three of us folded into each other without asking permission from the parts of our pride that would have refused. His shoulders shook. I smelled garlic on his shirt and hospital antiseptic still in my hair and realized life rarely scrubs clean. It just adds sense. Veronica cried too. Not the theatrical sobs of a woman caught small, stubborn tears of someone who finally sat down in the mess she made. I am sorry, she said, for all of it. For what I took from you, David. For what I withheld from you, Sloane. For what I made you carry, Maya. I don't know how to. Fix it, you don't, I said. You repair slowly, with receipts. I'll keep the receipts, she said, fierce and faint. The next weeks were a curriculum in repair. We met with a family therapist who had soft sweaters and sharp questions. She told us forgiveness is not something you do once on a Sunday. It's a habit you build like muscle. She told me my strength wasn't a reason to keep accepting everyone else's weights. She told Sloane that humility without humiliation is possible. And that her charisma wasn't a crime, but a tool that could build or burn depending on how she held it. She told Dad that accountability and love are not opposites. She told Veronica to stop setting tables as a substitute for telling the truth. At home, changes announced themselves in small domestic revolutions. I stopped cleaning up as a reflex. I made my own calendar and put it on the fridge next to Veronica's. Not a challenge, a coexistence. Bookstore inventory Friday night. I wrote in blue marker. Do not schedule my life over it. No one did. Sloane started coming to the bookstore after class, not for photos, just to sit in the back and read mystery novels, like she was learning a new language where attention didn't have to be begged for. She started a series on her channel called Undoing. No brand partners, no links. Just her talking about complicity, apology, and how to be the subject of your life without turning everyone else into props. She didn't mention me by name. She didn't have to. The comments were a battlefield that slowly grew a garden. I laughed at my sister, too. One woman wrote, I didn't know I wanted her alive more than I wanted to be the center until she fainted in my kitchen. People told on themselves and then told themselves a better story. We went back to the rooftop once. Not for a party, for a sunrise. Veronica called the manager and asked for access at 6 a.m. as a private family matter. And the universe decided we'd earned a favor. The lights were off. The city was quiet at that pearly hour when even the river seems to consider starting over. We stood near the spot where I'd gone down, where Sloane's laugh had rung like a bell that summoned a truth we hadn't been brave enough to dial. My knees still remembered the scrape. My palms felt phantom sting. You want to say something? Dad asked. Yes, I said, and I surprised myself by stepping onto the little platform where the DJ had set up that night. I licked my lips. They tasted like morning. I fell here, I said to the empty chairs and the honest light. I was sick, and I didn't know, and I fell. Someone laughed. Someone else gasped. Someone else called 911. All of it happened at once. My throat tightened. I breathed through it. The way the cardiologist taught me count over panic. Invite air in like a guest. I'm leaving the fall here, I said. I'm taking the truth with me. No applause, no photos. Just us, the river, and a kind of quiet that felt like consent. On the way down, Sloane grabbed my elbow knot because I was unsteady, because it was habit now to touch and be touched back. Can I do something? She asked. You just did, I said. No, she insisted, dredging her phone out of her pocket. It's for me. But also, yeah, for you. She opened the camera, held it at arm's length, then turned it off and put it away. Never mind. I wanted to film a redemption arc. But that puts the camera back on me. Today isn't content. Progress. I grinned. Write me a script if I relapse, she said, bumping my shoulder lightly. A week later, Veronica hosted a smaller gathering, not a curated fever dream. Just family. People who'd whispered now had to speak. She stood up before dessert and read from a page, hands shaking. It wasn't a beautiful speech. It was better. She named what she did without euphemism. She didn't ask for absolution. She asked for a chance to keep showing up without being the one in charge. The board she'd resigned from asked her back in a consulting capacity. She said no. I'm practicing non-leadership, she told them. I don't know if she'll keep that promise. But I saw her leave 2 chairs empty in the living room that evening space, invisible and deliberate. She's learning. My mom flew in with a carry-on full of Oregon rain and an apology for not being there when I got dizzy the first time. We walked along the river, arms linked. And she told me she'd also been someone who used leaving as a solution where a sentence would have done. You can be the first woman in this family who learns to stay, she said, without staying small. I'm trying, I said. You're doing, she corrected. At the bookstore, Mrs. Green asked how my funny turns were. Then pressed a paper bag into my hands with homemade iron-rich cookies. She'd Googled at 2 a.m. because she couldn't sleep thinking about me fainting among can-ups. I bit into one that afternoon behind the counter and cried, which made Lucia laugh so hard she almost fell off the step stool. I'm allowed, I sniffled. My hemoglobin is catching up to my emotions. Your emotions have always been hemoglobin, she said sagely, and we howled. Justice, it turned out, didn't look like an equal and opposite humiliation delivered with a flourish. It looked like balance, returning to a house built on tilted foundations. It looked like Sloane stopping mid-sentence when she realized she was narrating me again and then beginning again with, "What do you think, Maya?" It looked like Dad telling Veronica no when she tried to plan 3 events in a weekend and insisting we keep one evening, 4 board games, and a messy kitchen. It looked like Veronica texting me, "Do you want me to come to your hematology appointment, or would that feel like performance?" And me replying it would feel like love, and her showing up without heels, without a camera in her face, with breath mints and a crossword puzzle she could not finish, but tried anyway. We got the bills from the hospital. They were rude. Dad and Veronica insisted on paying them. I let them. "Accountability looks like this, too," Veronica said, sliding a check into a folder. "Not just speeches. Money is also an apology language." I kept the blue dress. I wore it to a scholarship dinner in August, where I won the campus writing prize Sloan once called "So Academic." I stood at the podium and read an essay called Gravity. And when I got to the part about the rooftop, the room held its breath for me. I didn't tell them about the DNA results. That was ours. I told them about the doctor who looked at my blood and found a story I'd been told to ignore. I told them about laughing and how sometimes it's a weapon and sometimes it's a relief. I told them that justice without kindness becomes revenge. And kindness without justice becomes permission, and that the trick is to hold both until your hands stop shaking. After, in the lobby, a girl in a red dress stopped me. "My sister and I haven't spoken in a year," she said. She made the world clap for her while I washed the dishes in the dark. "Your essay makes me want to call her, but also not be a dish." "Both can be true," I said. "Call her and buy paper plates." We took a picture together. I sent it to Sloan with the caption, "Incoming fan." She replied, "Tell her I have an opening for a better me." On a Tuesday in September, Sloan knocked on my door and peeked in. "Pilates starts in 20. You coming?" I made a face. "You know, the doctor said yoga is better for QT. She also said, listen to your body." "My body says it wants to be a shaking leaf," she teased. Then she sobered. "Come on. We can go for a walk instead. I don't care what we do. I just want to be where you are." There it was. Not a public apology, not a published essay. A day made together on purpose. We walked to the farmer's market and argued about peaches. We bought too many. At home we stood barefoot at the island. It's the same one where we'd once built playlists and calendars and walls. And we made a crumble that burned at the edges but tasted like a beginning we'd earned. Dad wandered in, stole a spoonful, made a face at the scorch, and ate another anyway. Veronica leaned on the counter, chin on her fist, and watched us like a woman who'd been given a second chance to see what love looks like when it's not arranged. Before bed, I sat on the glass stairs with a cup of tea, not to tempt fate, to test faith. I looked down through transparency to the foyer's marble floor and didn't feel the old fear. My knees itched where the scars were knitting themselves into memory. I thought of the rooftop, the clatter, the laughter, the siren. I thought of Dr. Nugent's steady voice, and the red bag of blood hung like a small sun that warmed me from the inside out. I thought of my father's hand finding mine, of Veronica's apology learning to walk, of my mother's arm, of Lucia's raunchy memes and iron cookies, of Sloan in hospital scrubs whispering. Sister, like a secret she wanted to keep safe. Here's what I learned, and what I tell you now like a benediction too. Anyone who has ever fallen in front of people who clap for the wrong thing, ask for help before your body asks for you. Do not confuse silence with strength. Do not confuse spectacle with substance. Laughter can be cruelty, or communion use it like fire. Carefully, preferably with supervision. Secrets rot the floorboards. Truth is expensive but cheaper than collapse. Justice without tenderness is a sword. Tenderness without justice is a lullaby. Build a home where both live in the same drawer. If someone laughs when you fall, remember that sometimes they are terrified you've proven gravity exists for them too. Sometimes they will double down, and sometimes they will show up in scrubs and give you their blood without a camera. If they show up, let them try. If they don't, step into your own light without waiting for them to be ready. If you are the one who laughed, learn to say, "I'm sorry," like it's a thing you do, not a thing you perform. Make receipts. Bring cookies. Sit in waiting rooms. Let the laugh die in your throat and let something kinder be born there. The rooftop is still there. People still gather under the lights and toast to intentions. Maybe one night, someone will wobble on their heels and catch themselves before they fall. Maybe another night, someone will go down and a stranger will kneel beside them and whisper, "I'm here." Maybe somewhere a doctor will read a printout and say, "Here is a truth about your heart." And the person in the bed will say, "I thought so." And the people around them will say, "We'll learn the language together." My life is not a picture anymore. It's not even a movie, though the soundtrack slaps thanks. Dad, it's a long story told in first person present. I fall. I'm caught. I get up. I tell the truth. I make tea. I send the text. I answer the call. I say sister and mean it. I forgive where I can. I hold boundaries where I must. I remember to eat. I listen to my heart counting time. I climb the glass stairs and come back down without feeling like I might disappear. I still carry a granola bar in my bag, talisman, and snack. Not because I expect to fall again, but because I finally learned that taking care of yourself in small and fancy ways is not evidence you're fragile. It's evidence you plan to be here. Sometimes, late, when the house is quiet and the river sings its low song, I hear a laugh echo from that rooftop night. It still stings a little the way old injuries ache, in bad weather, but right behind it now, I hear something else. A second sound braided through the first. The soft, breathy laugh of a girl sitting in a hospital chair, watching her blood drip into a bag. Whispering content as a joke because the only audience that mattered was one person on a bed who needed her not to look away. The two sounds live together in me now. They are both true. The worst of us and the best of us often are. When I turn out the light, I press my palm to my sternum, a habit and a check-in. The beat is steady. Not theatrical, not swelling, working, present. Mine, I whisper. To the dark, and to the girl I used to be, and to the woman I am becoming, we are not clumsy. We were unwell. We are not invisible. We were unclaimed. We are claimed now by the truth, by the people who stayed by ourselves. And somewhere down the hall, I hear Sloane's door open and her bare feet padding to the kitchen. A minute later, a whisper. "You want tea?" No exclamation point. No camera, no audience. Yes, I call back. I do. The water sings. The night exhales. The house holds. That's the whole story. Or at least the truest version I can tell. It begins with a fall. It ends with 2 mugs, steam curling, like promise. And a sister sitting across from me at the island. Letting the silence be a bridge, we cross back and forth. Until neither of us remembers which side we started on. If this story gripped your heart the way it did mine, don't let it end here. Hit that like button to show your support. And subscribe so you never miss the next tale of betrayal, secrets, and justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Maya's shoes? I read every single one. And remember, in every family, there's a truth waiting to be revealed. Stay tuned.